Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Playwright Dialogues. My name is Matt Lindsay. I'm the chair of the board of directors of the Dayton Playhouse, and it is my hope that everyone out there is well and in good spirits. The Playwright Dialogues are being produced as part of our alternative programming for FutureFest 2020. You can go to our website, DaytonPlayhouse.com, for a complete schedule of our activities for FutureFest 2020. These Playwright Dialogues are being produced as our opportunity to get to meet the playwrights and listen in as they converse with one another about their plays, their inspirations, their themes within their work. Each of these dialogues, and there are 3, will feature 2 of our 6 FutureFest finalists. And for this second dialogue, I am joined by Shanti Reinhardt, author of Otis, and Elana Gartner, author of Before Lesbians. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Some brief introductions. Shanti Reinhardt is a playwright and actor raised in Kauai, Hawaii, and now based in Los Angeles, and a graduate of the American Conservatory Theater. Other work by Reinhardt includes Blunt Force, produced at the 2019 Theater Brut Festival, and Kill 'Em with Aloha, or the Big Mouth Pidgin English play, a finalist for the Eugene O'Neill 2020 National Playwrights Conference. Her play Otis earned her first selection as a FutureFest finalist. Elana Gartner founded the EMG Playwriting Workshop and the International Center for Women Playwrights 50/50 Applause Awards, and served on the ICWP board for 5 years. She is the founding artistic director of Four Walls Theater, a theater project born out of the coronavirus pandemic we're in right now. Gartner's script, Before Lesbians, is her first FutureFest finalist selection. Elana Gartner and Shanti Reinhardt, welcome. And congratulations to you both for your selections as FutureFest finalists for 2020.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to be speaking with you both. So we paired the 2 of you together because your plays, one a light comedy and one a drama, they both feature really moving, touching moments of human relationship and human connection, but they also both feature really terrific characters. I mean, great parts for actors. So I'm really looking forward to a great discussion between the 2 of you. So Shanti Reinhardt, your play Otis introduces us to the diverse residents of a relatively nice condo building in Manhattan, and they share their stories with each other as they encounter one another in the elevator. So please share with us the inspiration for this play and tell us something of its journey, how it got to where it is today.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're sort of in Tudor City in New York, which has those old brownstones, you know, and I originally started writing a play. I wanted to write a play with the environment first, and I was writing it in a general store. So I had Nicholas, the character, going through his grief and loss, and he walks into a general store, and this is where he finds, you can buy anything in a general store, and this is where he finds spiritual connection. But the play just proved to be like too general. The environment was too big. And someone had mentioned a book they read about where a subplot was a guy had to escape his roommate in the middle of the night by going to an elevator. And I thought, I was immediately thrown to when I was a child. I grew up in Hawaii, away from my biological family. I was raised with a Hawaiian family. And when my biological family found me, my grandmother is Bernice. In this play, that's her. And her name is Bernice. I did not change it. So when I first visited her, I grew up in like a shack with a ditch running in front of my house. I was sent to New York City in this upper, like wealthy, like environment. And Bernice, when we would enter the machine, this beautiful Otis elevator, my child like mind, you know, felt, because I didn't have that, I had a relationship to land. So as a child, this new relationship, watching humans' relationship to machines to me is interesting, that anthropomorphic nature that sometimes people get with their cars, you know, they or their musical instruments. Sometimes the musical instruments ends up playing the person. And I was fascinated with Bernice as a character. She drives the play in a lot of ways, even if Nicholas is the main character. And how I would get as a child the stories of her relationships to people in the building. So I think the second I put the elevator as my environment, it was a sort of a backwards way of writing a play. Then I had all my characters. The minute I closed it and made it really tight, then the pressure cooker happened. Yeah. And then I was off and running. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
It was the environment that triggered pretty much everything. It just went zoop. And then, you know, the need, if you don't mind me going on about Elena, I'd like to ask you, I found what was interesting about your play and my play in a lot of ways too, is that you asked the question about how would they be in this time of social distancing? And oddly enough, our characters are social distanced.
Yeah.
And along with the social distancing, there seems to be secret entwined with social distancing, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, exactly. I thought about that question a lot, actually, because, you know, one of the things that we're experiencing a lot with the coronavirus situation and the, you know, having to be social distance and being very isolated is that we're in this sort of frozen time, which the characters in Before Lesbians really are also sort of in a somewhat frozen time. You know, they're in the Civil War. There's a lot of waiting, as we are doing now. There's a lot of waiting for things to happen, for things to sort of return to normal. And that's a lot of what we're doing now too. And they're sort of making the best of it and not really realizing how much they are really changing. And I think that we too are in that same situation. We're not really realizing how much we're changing as a result of the fact that we're in this situation. You have, in your characters, you have a pressure cooker situation, you know, where you're everybody's tight together. So I do see those similarities, a lot of the same similarities, where you have a pressure cooker situation. Mine is very frozen in time, in some ways, but in some ways it's in their minds they're frozen in time, but they are actually moving forward, and they don't realize it until their past sort of comes back.
Right. I feel like it also taps on our true selves. Like when there is no witness and we're locked in our apartments,
right,
or your characters are away from everyone.
Right.
You know, the idea of true self, are we performative when we're out in the world? Or in my case, it's so interesting because Nicholas is already practicing something that's alarming everyone. He's isolated himself.
Right.
So he, for a year, has been, like he says, I can get everything off the internet. I can do this. But something in him understands that being that isolated will be the death of him. So the farthest he can step out is like the elevator, which becomes a confessional, which becomes aligned to God or a higher power or something
Mm-hmm.
that, whereas your characters have that in each other, that higher self, to be with that connection. You know, right. Even if mine is a machine, there's a connection to a higher self of who is he, his grief, his loss. And I feel like in the time of coronavirus, would Nicholas be able to go to the elevator? So would that be the death of him? Like, would he not make it?
Well, and that's very interesting because I live in New York. So I know a lot of people right now who are living in apartment buildings, and you know, they have all agreed they can't be in the elevator together. So good. Like in many ways, like your play wouldn't even be able to happen right now, you know, which is so sad because these relationships that you've created, you know, they wouldn't have that connection, and that would be such a bummer.
Yes, but I do have this unseen character who's the doorman who makes sure to keep the elevator clear for Nicholas. So I thought, wow, in the time of we're living in, would he still make sure that elevator would be clear. Would he wipe it down? You know, there is,
We would write it down. Of course you would.
yeah, right. But there is, it is striking to me how these two plays cross so many themes, even if one. And what's interesting about your play to me is that, again, it could not be the same play if it was set in modern day.
No, it couldn't be. Well, and part of that is because of the texture of the use of the letters.
Which is perfect for Zoom.
It's
a perfect
yeah, I mean,
play.
Yeah, I mean, so my play was really when I read many years ago. I took a class at Oberlin College, which is where I went my senior year. I took a class on queer studies, and I read an article in that class that was so striking to me, that about the relationships between women that they were able to have with each other through letters. They were able to have affairs through letters, particularly when men were away. And that was so striking to me. And they were able to have all these hidden affairs. And I thought that was so fascinating and so striking. And letter writing at this point is such a bizarre lost art, which as a writer I'm very sad about. Not the same as email. And so it's not. I see Matt shaking his head.
It isn't, yeah.
And I thought, oh, that, I somehow I hid that away in my head for a while. I knew that at some point I was going to write a play about that. And it was just one of those things. It had to hang out in my head for a really long time. And it hung out for like 18, 19 years.
Oh.
No, for really, like for that long. And when the Pulse nightclub was attacked 4 years ago, and it was 4 years ago yesterday, as we are recording this now. When that was attacked, I think that alarm clock went off in me. And several weeks later, I started to write this play, and the play literally poured out of me in 7 weeks. A full-length play in 7 weeks, which is just, I've never written a play that fast. And it was in full form, and the characters were fully realized, and it was as though they had just been waiting there for all 18, 19 years. And it was really those letters that were really at the root of it. So that's why I have, in between all of the like main scenes, I have all of those letters, because I really felt that those were so important to how those women started connecting. I mean, they lived in different cities. At that time, living in different cities was a much bigger deal than living in different cities now.
Right.
And, so I had to find a way to put them in the same city, have a reason to pull them together. And they go off and, they start out by getting married to people who are going off to war. And that's how they meet. But then, they're lonely, as we all are right now. And so.
But it's bold to me in that I would be lonely and have a friend and not necessarily strike up a sexual relationship. This is bold to me in that, and that's why I love your title. I love everything about it. And what I mean, not just by the play can be written about the freedom to be gay, is also a different time. So it's very bold and dangerous because you've said it in this time, and that the danger is the pressure cooker.
Yeah, well, and I think, the Civil War was a huge game changer for women being able to getting out of marriages,
Oh,
becoming more economically independent,
right.
and realizing sort of their own self-worth and stuff like that. And then after the Civil War, being able to actually divorce their husbands should they want to, and go and have, and not that, being lesbians was, sort of approved of or anything like that. Not that that word even existed until the 1880s. But, and it wasn't even like a concept, that because women were considered to be asexual creatures. Sex was not something that women were supposed to have even be having.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so I have a question about that. So because they were considered to be asexual creatures, yet it was okay that they had these relationships.
Yes.
But does when her husband is Henry, when he comes back, is that Henry? What's her husband?
James.
Oh, sorry. When James comes back, there's that moment where I feel like he knows.
So
yeah.
So I think that, so without trying to give too much away.
Okay. All right.
So romantic relationships were one of these things, or romantic friendships were one of these things that that women were allowed to have prior to getting married, but they were expected to drop them once they got married. Which is sort of, I mean, if you think about, things like Gone with the Wind, women would go and nap together and it wouldn't be a big deal, right? It was like,
I honestly never thought about it that way. It's very enlightening to me, this play, in a lot of ways, that it wasn't so unusual.
Right. It wasn't, and women would walk down the street together holding hands and it wouldn't be such a big deal, right? But then they were not allowed to have those kinds of relationships once they got married. Once they were married, they were supposed to be dedicated to their husbands. They were supposed to be serving in that role. They were supposed to be having babies. That was what was expected. And that is not who these women ended up being. And, this play is also part of that struggle for them, because they struggle with what role should they be having, both domestically and in their roles as within society. I mean, Charlotte, goes and is volunteering and as a nurse, sort of. She does medical stuff, but then they discover that she actually is very skilled.
Which would be considered a masculine profession, or?
So it's interesting because, Elizabeth Blackwell had in 1841, 43, something like that, she was actually doing some of that kind of work. She was the first female doctor in the United States. And she founded a college in Philadelphia, which is referenced in the script, to train female doctors.
Right.
And Clara Barton was, she founded the Red Cross during the Civil War. Right. Dorothea Dix had the Army Nursing Corps. So there were a lot of women who were actually doing medical stuff. But it was like one of those things that was rising up. It was coming up. So there's a lot of stuff, that I was able to pull from history books. I've spent a lot of time at the library. Mm-hmm. Because, I wanted to make sure that I was doing things that were historically accurate. But, and then too, Vivian, she's a teacher, and she's very well read, particularly for a woman at that time. And she spends most of the play, giving Charlotte books to read and stuff like that. And they talk about them, and they, and so they are very unusual women for the time.
Unconventional and challenging conventional roles in terms of career.
Right, exactly. exactly.
And also challenging Vivian at the start of the play is an atheist, correct? So
She doesn't call herself that, but yes.
well, maybe that term didn't exist yet either. But they're challenging conventional religion, conventional gender roles in terms of work and career and relationships.
Right, right. And I think that one of the things with Shanti's script is that I think that there's a lot of challenging of roles as well. You know, I think that, you know, there's sort of the expectations of what each person is supposed to be, you know,
100%, yes, with Starla.
Yeah, you know, I mean, first of all, I love the character of Starla. I think she's amazing. Like, I want to like go and hang out with her. I think that she would be like a really fun person to just like go have lunch with.
Yeah, and you know, that character doesn't understand boundaries, right? There's a lot of boundaries in my play as well. Walls, doors, window, you know what I mean? And she breaks through these things, and it shatters the norm.
Right, exactly. And you know, I was actually intrigued that you said that Bernice was one of these characters that you had that wasn't really the main character, but that you had sort of ended up highlighting her, because you know there's sort of two deaths really that end up happening, and it's they affect Nicholas's character and Bernice's character, again, without trying to tell too much, but I don't think that really gives away too much. But I do find it interesting because it is what ends up bringing all of these characters together. And
we understand loss and grief and empathy once we experience it.
And that too, I think, is also a lot of what's going around now.
Correct.
So, and is that, you know, one of the most human things that we can experience is that, you know, in this coronavirus situation, one of the things that we have all been in touch with each other about is, you know, illness and loss and, you know, devastation. And so I do think that those are all there you can see echoes of, I mean, it's just humanity, you know?
Yeah, that's right. It's at the end of the day, it's like you said, it's the characters, the humanity, the flaws. Everyone is flawed, and how do we punish ourselves for that, or can we be very forgiving of ourselves? Have we worked through that? Like Starla's the character that's worked through so much more because she's from the streets. She's survived it. She's been through the other side. It's gonna be harder for her to isolate with the coronavirus because she needs people. Right? It's so hard. If she goes without the mask, like, hey, get your, you know, she'll be one of the, oh, sorry, you know, but
she might design some masks.
She will end up designing masks.
Yeah.
100%. But Nicholas does not forgive himself for his flaws yet, and his grief and his loss. He should be allowed to, but there's no one to guide him, you know? So yeah, it's at the end of the day, the two plays do have this, the heart hurts. That's the truth.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I mean, and I think I like the character of Bodhi too. I mean, he's such a sweet character. I feel like he's trying to help in so many different ways. You know, I feel like he's sort of,
well, he's an outsider as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and you know, outsiders, the minute they have that connection, like he and Starla all of a sudden really bond.
Right.
Understanding of being on the outside looking in another way through sexuality for Bodhi, you know? And
right. Now you went to the Great Plains Theater Conference also, is that true?
Yes.
I did as well, a number of years ago.
Oh, it was just truly a phenomenal experience. I went the year before last. Yeah.
Yeah, I was there in 2013.
Oh,
So, yeah.
special place, and because of that experience, I wrote "Kill 'Em with Aloha" actually. That just placed as a finalist for O'Neill.
That's great.
Yeah. It
Awesome.
yeah. These get-togethers. I appreciate the Dayton Playhouse for finding a way to have us this conversation, to be with each other, because it's such a isolating experience writing, you know.
Yeah.
Once you're in, like you said, you sat with this play for 18 years. Like you, Otis came out literally first draft in 3 weeks. It never, I've been suffering with this thing. The minute I had my environment, it just came out. But you're by yourself. So these opportunities to be at conferences and festivals, that's what connects. So thank you really for finding yet, Matt, another way for us to connect.
Yeah.
Well, you're welcome. So I wanted to ask you both, since you both talked about having these nuggets in your head of these plays, at what point did you decide that this idea could be or should be a stage play as opposed to some other medium?
I mean, I always write for stage.
Me too. Yeah.
So it was never, in my mind, it wasn't a question of whether it should be a stage play. It was really just a question of how to make it so that there is the reason for it to be a stage. I mean, there are these moments with the letters where they're throwing them up in the air as they're reading them, and it's a lot more dramatic. It's not really something that I think, I mean, we'll see how it works on Zoom, but I don't know. It might be very interesting, and I'm very willing to try it. But it was meant to be, in a theater with the immediacy. I part of why I write for theater is because I like the immediacy of the emotion, and I do want people to not be able to turn it off. I want them to be sort of forced to confront what they're seeing and what they're experiencing, and not be able to, without having to say excuse me to about 5 different people, walk out.
Right. Hit the pause button.
Yeah, I mean, in life, you can't run away from what's going on all the time. You have to be able to eventually confront the emotions that are happening and situations that you're in, and that is what theater is about.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I'm a theatrical person. I went to the American Conservatory Theater as an actor first. I'm an actor, and I'm theatrical, and I enjoy spectacle. I enjoy the quietness of a small piece, so my heart can break open. I write for the stage for those reasons. But Otis, for me, it's a different play than I've written before, in that I wanted to also write a designer's play. The one thing that hasn't been realized, I'm so looking forward to, is the designer to come in and when I brought, this play was brought to Great Plains, one of the things I really was inspired about being there was they brought in designers for your play. You got to have a relationship with them. And I thought I'd always wanted a cello in Otis to be the sound of the elevator. So it was theatrical. It belongs on stage. And I was like, a designer would be able to put the cello in a window, it would be able to maybe put it on the side. But then the relationship again to the the vibration of the world would add. And so that's what I can't wait to see with this play. I left it open because I want that experience of the designers to help me interpret what is I left as an empty space.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to the actual sound of an elevator. I really want it to be music.
So your play, Shanti Reinhardt, includes elements of magical realism, right? As the audience comes to learn that the elevator is more than just an elevator. It's a character.
Yes.
What were the joys and the challenges, and how did you find that balance between the magic and the realism as you were writing this?
Again, I'm naturally inclined that way. Growing up in Hawaii, and like I said, I was raised with a Hawaiian family. We find, it's called mana, you know, it's spirit in all living things. So for us, a rock has spirit. And I just extended it. I would watch my brothers deal with their cars. It's just like, it's interesting to me. So for me, it's very natural. I gravitate towards magical realism. I pay attention to clues that, you know, maybe other people don't see. So it was, I didn't have to think about that part of it. It just was, you know, that fate and destiny and prayer. I mean, in a way, Nicholas is praying, so he gets an answer. The Otis becomes the conduit of who he's praying to for some kind of guidance, some kind of help, why people go to confession. So the spirit, it just came together for me without thinking about it, I have to be honest. It's just, once I started writing, it just was part of it.
So to wrap up, just tell us about what you think the future is for your script, or what you're, you know, what are you doing now that you're locked down in pandemic? And what's the future for this? What are the next steps or stages for your scripts? Are they still works in progress, or are you continuing to work on other things?
Well, I actually, Before Lesbians is actually going to have another reading in August with a company called Good Luck Macbeth. And no, we're not exactly sure exactly when in August, but it will be also streaming, or we're not sure, streaming or recorded or something. Right. I've talked to that director. And so yeah, so we'll have two options for seeing that this summer. So that'll be fantastic. As you mentioned earlier, and during this pandemic, I have founded a theater company called Four Walls Theater, because apparently that's what you do when you are stuck inside. And we are a socially responsible theater company that produces online readings and we use artists nationally. We have produced 2 shows so far, and our next show will go up the weekend before Future Fest. And it will be dedicated to Black Lives Matter. And it will also be dedicated to 2020 grads. So all of our actors will be 2020 grads. We will do another one at the end of August that will also be 2020 grads. So a portion of all of our, each production's proceeds go to support different charities that are chosen by the production. So yeah, that's a lot of what I've been doing.
That's a lot. Shanti?
That's a lot. Otis, I want it to be produced. I don't know where that will be. It's just a magical play that every time it's had any kind of reading, it's just been so well received that I don't know. It's done for me. Like I said, what I leave open is the designer. I know once I get that designer and director in to take it to that next, the open space I've left for it, I trust it. So I'm done. Yeah. And what I've been working on with Kill 'Em With Aloha, or the Big Mouth Pigeon English play, actually, oddly enough, it's being developed for a television series. So right before the pandemic, a development company, 20K, put me together with another writer from Hawaii, and we've been opening it up to a series. And so that we did our first Zoom pitch. That was really phenomenally interesting. But I now am writing the prequel to that play set in a general store. I wanted to write that. So the play I'm working on now is a Japanese mom and pop shop, the kind of stores that I grew up in, and you know, and that as a child I observe, you know, as playwrights we observe. Yeah, Elena, we watch, we always watching and projecting. I'm always projecting, you know, what that person's feeling or whatever. So yeah, I'm just moving forward, hoping that trusting that the world, we will be back in theater. It'll be different, but I love that, Elena, you're already adapting. The adapters win. They will be able to survive. So I just I'm just writing as if the theater will be back.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the hope. I mean, you have to sort of hope that we're eventually going to get back. I mean, I know that around here they're already talking about how they're going to, you know, spread the audiences out, and there's theories about how they're going to protect actors and create space in backstage spaces and stuff like that. And those are many conversations, and we'll see how those go. The great thing is that New York is already starting to open up. So that feels like a little bit of a relief. We're only in stage 1. By the time you see this, we'll probably be further along.
Let's hope so, yes.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Well, outdoor theater seems that like the first way to do this. You know, it feels like you could do out, you know, you could continue with that.
Yeah, I believe I heard of some Shakespeare and parking lot stuff happening.
Well, thank you both for all the work you're doing, and my best wishes for the future for both of your scripts and your other projects. They sound wonderful. Thank you both for giving some of your time today to share your insights about your plays and your conversation about Future Fest and theater. I appreciate both of you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for our audience, please go over to the Dayton Playhouse YouTube channel and look at all of our playwright dialogues. They should all be available. And also go to our website, DaytonPlayhouse.com, for a full schedule of our alternative programming for Future Fest, including tickets to our streaming events. Thank you very much for joining us.